We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot, season number 4, episode number 26. And man, I hope you guys had a great weekend, man. Hope you guys were safe and sound, kicked back and enjoyed the weekend. Man, was it a very eventful weekend as we a week away from Super Bowl number 59, Kansas City Chiefs, as well as the Philadelphia Eagles. And woo, boy, the NBA is taking back the spotlight while we've not had football for the past week. And first and foremost, man, this has been crazy, man. What a crazy 48-hour window across the National Basketball Association. As first and foremost, man, if it's your first time listening, man, I appreciate the check-in. We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot. We provide high-fire takes and analysis across the sporting landscape. And if you're OG of the show, man, I appreciate the check-in once again. Man, and we gonna get right into it, man. On this episode, man, we gonna get into the hot button trade with the Los Angeles Lakers and the Dallas Mavericks as LUKA moves on from the Dallas Mavericks to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis. And woo, boy, what a hot trade that was, as man, it shook up the apple cart. It shocked the NBA world out there. Know you guys have definitely heard about it. I'm going to give my 2 cents on that whole situation. As I predicted a couple episodes ago that the Los Angeles Lakers may move on from Anthony Davis as well as LeBron James. Well, I got half that right, as the Lakers moved on from AD as he goes down to Big D in Dallas. And just my quick thoughts in regards to the trade, as I'm definitely going to have a complete breakdown coming up, is that, one, the Lakers, they knew they had to make a move, man, to try to make this team competitive. But I think that this move is a gear up for the future as they bring in 25-year-old LUKA. To me, easily a top 3 to 5 player in the NBA when healthy. You know, this guy hadn't played a game since Christmas time for the Dallas Mavericks. As the Mavericks, they move on. They didn't want to pay him that big old bag of money, man, with the Supermax, close to about $350 million. And the Los Angeles Lakers, the AD era is over. I know you guys remember when he moved over there from the New Orleans Pelicans. That was a whole situation. The Lakers, they was able to win the 2020 NBA championship in the bubble. And Anthony Davis, man, he been very outspoken the last, week or so, saying that he needed another big man next to him. And I had a feeling, man, I had an inkling that the tea leaves was set for him to be moved. Didn't quite think it'd go down for LUKA, but woo, boy, what a trade this was off the rip. Man, so as I mentioned a little earlier, I'm going to get into that trade in great detail as I break down just grades from both sides and just the perspective on both sides of the coin for both of those teams. And man, right before I was going to go on the press, man, it was another huge trade in the NBA, because I had a feeling it was going to be a domino effect. And this one involves my Chicago Bulls. And I know first and foremost, man, my man Mako, man, from the Sports Betting, Weekly Dog Sports Betting Podcast, man, him and East Salim, Mr. Taylor Street. Know they was talking about this. You know, I appeared on their show about a week or so ago. Know you guys may have been able to check that out over the internet on TikTok as well as YouTube. The whole Zach LaVine thing. And it looks like the Zach LaVine era in Chicago is over with, as the Sacramento Kings, they're finalizing a 3-team deal to send De'Aaron Fox to the San Antonio Spurs, which I predicted that the Spurs, you know, once I saw he was interested in going down to the San Antonio, I expected them to hit the go button very, very early on this situation, as they did, as De'Aaron Fox will be a San Antonio Spur. As well as the Sacramento Kings, they were able to acquire Zach LaVine as part of the deal. As I mentioned, it's a 3-team deal. And this put Fox up with Victor Wembanyama, who has now just been added to the All-Star team. Congratulations to him once again. I think the San Antonio Spurs, they've been quiet the last couple of years, but they're a class organization, and I knew they was going to get their weight up sooner or later. So those two pair up in regards. As well as LaVine gets shipped out to Sacramento like the beam, as he joins, man, the Sacramento Kings and their whole situation that they got out there in SACTOWN. And, he linked back up with DeMar DeRozan, his former teammate with the Chicago Bulls last season. And, boy, this thing has many layers just in regards of it. It's 3 first-round picks in this deal. One of these picks are Charlotte's pick this season. San Antonio's pick for 2027. Also, Minnesota got in the deal some kind of way. I think San Antonio owned their 2031 first-round pick just in regards. It's also 3 second-round picks. It's 2025 from the Bulls. Also, a 2028 pick that came from Denver just in regards. And, man, the Bulls, on their end, they get their first-round pick back from the San Antonio Spurs, as well as they bring in Zach Collins, who, I was a fan of Zach Collins when he came out of Gonzaga a few years ago. Also, they bring in Trey Jones. Also, too, they bring in Kevin Huerter. And, boy, this was a huge deal, man. And first, I'm going to speak on from the perspective of the Chicago Bulls in this one. As I mentioned, the Zach LaVine era is ceremoniously over with in Chicago. I think the Bulls at this point, they've definitely hit the reset button. I think also, too, with the Bulls now getting their pick back from 2025 coming up in this year's draft, the Bulls are straight on tank mode, man. And this is an organization I had, as we say, one in the clip for the Chicago Bulls. I have not been happy at all with the organization. My Bulls have been acting like they just a corner store bodega, and this is one of the most profitable franchises in all the sports, especially in the NBA. And it's a passionate fan base, and me being included in that, I thought that, the front office of the Chicago Bulls have been on straight trash. They just been kind of sitting on their cars forever and a day. So I knew at some point LaVine would be dealt before the trade deadline. Just wasn't sure where he was going to go. And, man, just with the pieces that we getting back in the 2025 pick, is that the Bulls are in full tank mode at this point. I think it's in their best interest to get them a top 3 pick. I think that obviously we got Cooper Flagg in there. We got Ace Bailey, man, up there in Rutgers, who I got a chance to see down here in Georgia. Play some good basketball in his high school career, followed him for the last couple of years. Also, we got Dylan Harper, who's up there with Rutgers as well, the son of Ron Harper, the former Chicago Bull. And I just think that the Bulls, they should be gearing up to get one of those 3 guys, man. And this team has definitely hit the reset button. I think it's going to be a long time, man, before the Bulls get back relevant again. And it is very, very sad. As you guys may know, some of my OGs of the show, grew up literally 2.5 blocks away from the United Center, man. So, I'm very, very passionate about my Bulls. Had an opportunity, to be at ground zero, man, of just the whole dynasty with MJ and Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson. And so this is a move, man, that at the end of the day, I knew the Bulls was going to try to move on from Zach LaVine at the trade deadline. It was inevitable. Zach LaVine, in my opinion, this season, he played his best year as a Bull, but Bulls are going nowhere fast, man. And so I just think that at the end of the day, the Bulls had to make a move at some point to try to get some kind of value back from Zach LaVine. As I mentioned, man, I am very, very frustrated with the organization as a whole. I just think that, the front office with AK up there, man, he's done a terrible job for the Chicago Bulls. And, OGs of the show, man, you know how I get out, man. It's straight talk, little chaser here, man. I'm not going to hold nothing. I'm not going to hold you. I just am very, very frustrated with just the direction of this organization. And this is a situation where I think Vucevic, he definitely may be traded by the trade deadline. And I think the Bulls are officially got on tank mode just in regards. So we'll see what this thing do, how it unfolds. Also, too, man, I'm going to have to check in with my OGs, man, up there in Chicago, man, to come through and check in, get their 2 cents of this whole situation. But this thing hit the desk, man, right as we're about to hit print on this whole deal. So, boy, we'll see how this thing unfolds. Also, too, man, on the show, man, as I mentioned, we in Super Bowl week officially. Media Day is coming up, so we'll see what the festivities be about in the Super Bowl down there in New Orleans, Super Bowl number 59. And I got a little treat for you guys coming up on the show as well. I got my top 5, my Big 5, Super Bowl edition Big 5. I got my Big 5 Super Bowl performances of the 58 Super Bowls we done had so far going into Super Bowl number 59. So I know that's going to be a nice little treat for you guys just in regards. So I appreciate that. And as you know how I get out, man, you can definitely check me out on Twitter at We On 5 Sports. You also, too, can check us out on YouTube at We On 5 Sports Podcast. No doubt about that. Also, too, man, get at your boy on Facebook, man, just in regards, man. And like I said, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. Coming up, the rest of the show, We on Fire Sports Podcast. The spot. We on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot. And man, we had a huge blockbuster trade that jumped off late Saturday. And boy, was this a blockbuster deal. This has turned the NBA on its head. I mean, it's been making headlines across just the whole sporting landscape. And you know, I had to get into it, man. This is a big deal. And this is something that, you know, I kind of alluded to a little bit maybe about a week or so ago. And part of kind of what I alluded to kind of came into fruition. If you hadn't been under a rock, it's a big time trade between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Dallas Mavericks. As the Lakers were able to bring in LUKA, Maxi Kleber, and Marquise Morris for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, the Lakers 2029 pick. Also, too, the Jazz was involved in this trade, which the Jazz is hot garbage right now, so nobody really cared about what the Jazz got in this deal. But they did get Jalen Hood-Schifino. Also, too, they got a 2025 second-round pick via the Clippers, as well as the Mavericks 2025 pick. And this was huge. And just to kind of circle back of what I said, you know, maybe a couple episodes ago, is I thought that the Los Angeles Lakers should move on from LeBron James and Anthony Davis. You know, I just feel that one, LeBron James is 40 years old. You know, Anthony Davis, he just never really seemed, you know, happy in Los Angeles outside of them winning the championship in the bubble. You know, made a couple comments, you know, a couple days ago, just saying that, you know, hey, we need another big, we need a 5. I'm more comfortable playing the 4. And to me, I was already kind of on that vibe and on that time that I think that the Lakers should move on from both of them, because I think at the end of the day, when you have star players like that, and you really don't have a realistic chance at winning an NBA championship, especially when these guys are both over the age of 30, with LeBron being 40 years old at this point. You know, I think you do have to entertain moving these guys and seeing what you can get for them to build for the future. And they got half the equation right by shipping out Davis. So I'm going to break this thing down, man, first of all, from the Dallas standpoint, or the Dallas viewpoint, first and foremost. Because LUKA, I mean, when healthy, this guy's easily a top 3 to 5 player in the NBA, without question. I mean, what he was able to do last year, man, and get the Dallas Mavericks to the NBA Finals as they fell short against the Boston Celtics last year, you know, was phenomenal. I mean, the man was straight hooping. I mean, especially in the Western Conference Finals, man. I mean, he was putting on an absolute show. And so I think, first from the Dallas perspective, I think at the end of the day, you know, LUKA, you know, there has been some questions really about his conditioning, really about his attitude, you know, and it's something that I've said, you know, on the show, even going back to last year, is that he has to change his attitude a little bit, especially with the refs. You know, he's barking at the refs constantly, you know, and I just think that at the end of the day, when you that superstar guy, when you that franchise dude, you know, your attitude means a lot, and it permeates throughout the rest of the organization and with the rest of your teammates and so forth. So, you know, I'm not going to kill him and put him in the same kind of bucket as I, you know, do with Jimmy Butler per se. But I just think that it was something that to me was a little concerning. But, you know, he was a young guy. And I felt like, man, just with the maturity, he's able to potentially kind of grow out of it. I think Nico Harrison, the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, you know, he kind of took a long view on it and just felt like, hey, at the end of the day, this guy's eligible for a $340 million contract in reference to a Supermax. And once you make that type of deal, especially in today's NBA, when you look at the economy of the NBA and the collective bargaining agreement and just kind of the changes in the salary cap and just the luxury tax and the aprons and so forth, is that once you sign a guy to that type of deal, it's almost virtually impossible to move on from the guy. And so I just think that at the end of the day, Dallas took a long view just in regards of it. I mean, I'm not going to front. This came out of left field. But when you break it down, I can kind of understand the perspective from Dallas' viewpoint. Meaning that, one, he's already gotten his team to the NBA Finals, even though they fell short. So they kind of feel like, hey, we may have maxed out with him in his tenure, say, down in Dallas. Number two, you still got Chop Master Kyrie Irving down there, which, one would consider him pretty much kind of the best, number two guy, maybe a number three, but I kind of look at him as a number two guy, say, in the league. He's been a number two guy and won an NBA championship before with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So you already got a guy in place that that he kind of knows his role. Kyrie Irving has been on his best behavior down in Dallas. We ain't heard nothing from Kyrie Irving, just straight hooping. And so I think that you already got that number two guy in place. And now what you can do from a Dallas standpoint, it gives you an opportunity to what I call build your team organically. Because now you got the big guard combo. You got a couple pieces in, PJ Washington. You got Klay Thompson. And you have the ability now when you bring in Max Christie is that you bring in a younger wing who Max Christie was hooping with the Los Angeles Lakers. From the state of Illinois, won basketball in Illinois. So I've been knowing about Max Christie for a while, just back from his high school days. And so for me, it's a situation of where Dallas took a long view just in regards of it. And I think that it kind of goes back to what I've always said about general managers and the ones that are in the upper crust of the NBA. Scared money don't make no money. So you do have to make risky moves just in regards. I think Anthony Davis, he's probably had his best season in the last, say, 4 or 5 years so far. He's a little banged up now, which, you're going to get a little bit of that out of Anthony Davis. But for the most part, the last, I would say 15 months or so, this guy's been a healthy ball player pretty much. And so for Dallas, I think for them, it just gives you the opportunity to build your team organically, and you can still be aggressive, and you don't have that what I call cloud of paying a guy close to $400 million who may have a bad attitude. And, we saw it kind of last year, which was kind of funny when, they got to the NBA Finals and, the assistant GM for the Dallas Mavericks, Mr. Michael Finley, took the bill out of Luka Doncic's hand. And Luka, he's had a lot of soft tissue injuries as well. I mean, this guy ain't played basketball, man, in close to almost a month and a half almost, man. He hadn't played since Christmas, basically. And so for Dallas, they kind of just looking at it from a viewpoint of instead of giving this guy this big bag of money, we're going to trade him in. I do think that the Dallas Mavericks could have got a couple first round picks or a couple pick swaps just in regards of it, just to set the table a little bit more for them. But I can't be mad at them per se just in regards to this particular deal. Now, people like giving out grades and all of that in regards to trades. To me, I kind of look at this as a B+. And the only reason I don't give it an A from a Dallas standpoint is that I think you could have fleeced some more out of the Lakers, or because it was a 3-team deal, you could have fleeced a little bit more out of the Utah Jazz as far as an extra pick in there or something like that. But other than that, I can't be mad at it. Now, pivoted to the Los Angeles Lakers side. First and foremost, I just think that this is a shot at, and I'm not going to get too heavy with this, LeBron lovers, but I do think that Rob Pelinka, one, he understood that his job potentially is on the line. Meaning that at the end of the day, when you're a general manager, and I said this a couple episodes ago, is that it's only so much you can trade before you get to the top two guys on your team, and you have to have that real conversations whether or not we have to deal these guys and rebuild this thing over again. And so I think that Rob got half the equation right. Now, wait for it. I do think it's time for the Los Angeles Lakers to entertain trading LeBron James, because I think at the end of the day, I would rather get rid of a guy a year too early versus a year too late. And I know you guys have heard that analogy before. If you think about what you can get for LeBron James as far as on the trade market, you can get you a nice little something for LeBron James. I do think that him and LUKA, and there's been a lot of people that say, well, now they championship contenders and the odds went up in Vegas and all of that. You got two ball dominant guys now. And so I just think that at the end of the day, you got one guy that's 25, you got one guy that's 40. And I just think at the end of the day, traditionally, that does not say work. Now, the Lakers, they could make some ancillary, some other moves just in regards, because I think that at this point now, you really have no big man at this point. And so you got to bring in some kind of rim protection to the Los Angeles Lakers. they can finesse and bring in a couple garbage man guys to kind of, make that situation a little bit more fruitful for them. But I would strongly entertain from the Los Angeles Lakers viewpoint that they move on from LeBron James, because I just think that at the end of the day, you can rebuild the team around LUKA Doncic. You can 1-2 set the table as far as your draft picks is concerned, and just some of the talent that you can bring in, and you can reset this thing, say, over. Now, what I'm hearing is that LeBron James will be there basically past the trade deadline, which is coming up in the next, week or so. We're definitely going to get into that a little bit more as we get a little bit closer to the trade deadline. And so I just think that at the end of the day, I got to tip my cap to Rob Pelinka from a standpoint of he had the gusto to actually make the move. The trade really got proposed to them, say from the Dallas Mavericks. Him and Nico Harrison, they have a long relationship kind of going back. Pelinka was the agent for Kobe Bryant. Nico Harrison was the representative at Nike for Kobe Bryant when Nike was, when Kobe was over there at Nike. And so I just think that, one, they was able to keep this trade situation under wraps. Two, there's been a lot of people just poking at LeBron James saying, he's the Black Widow of the NBA, which I still believe that, by the way. But I do think that this move, I truly believe it was made without LeBron James in this standpoint. I think that Rob Pelinka, he knows that at the end of the day is that he's tied into Clutch Sports and Rich Paul and LeBron James. And for him to be able to keep his job, he has to make big time and big boy moves opposite of them. And I think this move was a move that was opposite of them. And so shout out to him just having the gusto to be able to make this move. This is a huge, huge deal. I'm going to get into this a little bit more, just kind of moving forward. But I had to, speak my piece just in regards to this big time move. As far as the grade for the Los Angeles Lakers on this one, it's going to be surprising. I'm going to surprise you guys with this one. I'm going to give it a B+ also. And the reason I give this one a B+ for the Lakers, because I think they still have work to do. Meaning that this is not a definitive move from the Lakers. I still think they have to make a couple moves. You don't have a big man now at all. So what all these people saying, oh man, they can maybe win the championship, and boys, stop. Just please, just stop it now. And it's getting frustrating for me from a standpoint of you have what I call non-basketball people that just go out there and just kind of put it, what I call at the top of a roller coaster, and just, oh my God, just hold your horses for a minute. I just think that the Los Angeles Lakers, they have a few more moves to make just in regards to this situation. But I think that the second move, if I was the Los Angeles Lakers, I would strongly entertain moving on from LeBron James. So we'll see what it do. First and foremost, man, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot. Welcome back. And I got a special treat for y'all, man, as we have Super Bowl 59 coming up down in New Orleans between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, as the Chiefs are looking for their third consecutive Super Bowl, trying to make history. Patrick Mahomes and the Eagles, they trying to win their second Super Bowl, and their nice little run is the second appearance that they've had in the last, 3 seasons. But thinking about the Super Bowl, man, I get kind of nostalgic, man, as we think about all the great players that have played in the Super Bowl, the great teams, the great coaches, the great halftime performances, and just all that, man, has me in a nostalgic mood. So I came up with a list, man. I'm notorious for the list if you're an OG of the show, man. And I got my big five Super Bowl performances that I've seen throughout the years as we move forward into Super Bowl number 59. And I'm going to get right into it, man. At number 5. This Super Bowl, ironically, was the first Super Bowl that I ever remember watching. And this is the Super Bowl and it's Super Bowl 18, by the way. And that's between the then Los Angeles Raiders and the Washington then Redskins. as Marcus Allen, man. And if you're a super OG, I know you guys remember. If you're young, and you definitely got to go back and YouTube this, man. Marcus Allen, 191 yards on the ground. The most rushing yards at that time in the Super Bowl. He was later eclipsed by Timmy Smith a couple years later. But man, Marcus Allen put this team on his back. I just remember just watching a little bit of the game, being just a straight shorty. My father having a Super Bowl party at the time. Living in an apartment on the south side of Chicago, man, and just watching just that historic run that he had, man, that 74-yard touchdown run where he broke left, then cut back mid-stride, went right, just cut right up through the seam, man, and it was definitely one of the biggest plays in Super Bowl history. Definitely one of the plays that kind of caught my imagination as a kid, man, and just kind of fell in love with the National Football League. So definitely shout out to Marcus Allen on that one, man. Like I said, it was one of the most historic runs I ever remember seeing. A lot of people forget, too, how bad Marcus Allen was, man, back in the day, man. This guy was just all you can get it at running back. We got another special running back playing in the Super Bowl this go around with Saquon Barkley. And Saquon reminds me a lot of Marcus Allen from a standpoint of just got that one-hitter appeal. Just one play this guy can break out a 70-yard touchdown at any moment. A guy that's tough, a guy that's durable, a guy that can block, a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield, man. And, Marcus Allen, like I said, definitely was a treat. So I got Marcus Allen coming in at number 5. At number 4, man, I got a guy that some would say is the greatest receiver of all time. I'm definitely in that end as the greatest receiver of all time, arguably the greatest football player of all time. He's definitely the most consistent and most electric football player that I've ever seen, just from his duration of his career. And yeah, man, I'm talking about Jerry Rice, man. Jerry Rice, man, Super Bowl 23, 11 receptions, 216 yards. And boy, was this a good Super Bowl. And you would think for a guy that had 216 yards, it would be a super high scoring affair. But this game came down to the end, man, as the Niners was able to knock off the Bengals 20-16. I'll never forget the final drive, man, by Joe Montana going down the field, man. It just was epic. Just Rice, a couple plays, during that particular series, but he had an outstanding game, man. I mean, he was straight unstoppable. The whole game, had a couple catches, like I mentioned, on that final drive, as Joe Montana was able to go to John Taylor for the touchdown. But Jerry Rice, man, enough said with this guy. Like I said, if you went around and, watch, just the height of Jerry Rice's career, man, I mean, you can spend a whole day on YouTube, man, with this guy highlights. I mean, just all-time leading receiver in yardage, all-time leading receiver in catches, all-time leading receiver in touchdowns. And so just a triple threat just across the board, just a hard-working guy. Never forget just seeing footage of him, man, running them hills and guys not being able to even keep up with him. Running those hills, man, just stayed in tip-top condition, and definitely in my opinion, one of the top 3 players I've ever seen play in the National Football League, man. So shout out to Jerry coming in at number 4. At number 3, this one a little bit more closer to today's times, not super back in the day. And I'm just going to say this first, man. Just condolences, man, out to the Atlanta Falcons fans out there, man. It definitely was an epic situation down in Atlanta watching this, man. I thought this franchise was going to get its first ever Super Bowl. And yeah, number 3, man, I got Tom Brady, man. Super Bowl 51, man, 466 yards. Most notably, man, bringing the New England Patriots back from down 28-3. I mean, literally, the Falcons was one first down away, man, from just closing this thing out. And Tom Brady just straight put on a Superman cape. I mean, just play out the play. Now, there was a few plays within this particular game that wasn't, say, Tom Brady. I'll never forget the strip sack by Dante Hightower. That was a big-time play. But Tom Brady, man, that's all he really needed. Just put the team on his back, him and Julian Edelman, just the chemistry that they had. And just can't forget about James White. As this notably was the first Super Bowl to go into overtime, man, as Tom Brady and the New England Patriots won another Super Bowl, man. And this guy, like I said, coming back from 28-3 is the biggest deficit of a comeback in Super Bowl history. Also, to the first Super Bowl, man, to go into overtime, like I mentioned, as the Patriots was able to knock off the Atlanta Falcons. So I got Tom Brady, yeah, man, coming in at number 3. At number 2, man, I'm going to take you guys back a little bit on number 2, man. And number 2 I remember watching this game, man, just being a super NFL fan, as a kid once again, man. And I'm going to take you guys back to Super Bowl number 24. And this was between the 49ers and the Denver Broncos, man. It's still a record, man, as the 49ers was able to put up a 55-piece in the Super Bowl. And Joe Montana, man. I mean, this offense was just clicking at all cylinders. It's Joe Montana. He only had 297 yards passing, man. But this guy had 5 TDs at the time, then Super Bowl record. And this thing got ugly. I'm talking about early. It was one of those Super Bowls. I mean, like I said, it's the biggest Super Bowl scoring from a football club in the history of the Super Bowl. And I just remember watching this game, man, especially like throughout the first maybe 10 minutes of the game, just knowing just like this that this game was over. I mean, the offense was clicking on all cylinders. And it wasn't like the Denver Broncos had a poo-butt defense either, because they had some OGs on their defense. Guys like Steve Atwater and guys like Dennis Smith and Carl Mecklenburg. So they had a stout defensive unit. But they had nothing for the San Francisco 49ers. As ironically, the 49ers won this football game. They actually repeated. And so, we got the Kansas City Chiefs now in the Super Bowl going for the three-peat. But to me, this was the best 2-time Super Bowl champion as far as just from a talent standpoint and just offense that I've ever seen in the history of the National Football League. And so I got Joe Montana, man, Mr. Joe Cool, coming in at number 2. And then at number 1, man, we're going to keep this one out in the Bay, man. And this was, to me, a poignant Super Bowl. And it was the Super Bowl number 29, man. And this one was between the San Francisco 49ers and the San Diego Chargers. And what made the Super Bowl to me notable, they had won the San Francisco 49ers a few Super Bowls coming into this one. But this was the first time, man, that Steve Young came into the Super Bowl as a starting quarterback. Those who know back in the day, man, the guy had a monkey on his back, man, trying to escape the ghost of Joe Montana. And boy, what a performance did this guy put up, man. I mean, 325 yards, 6 touchdowns. I mean, he was on one. And this game, to me, it was over early. It was over early. I remember him going to Rice early in the game for a touchdown, and it just spiraled from that. Shout out to Ricky Waters. He had an outstanding game. I think Rick Waters had about 3 or 4 touchdowns in this Super Bowl. But I got Steve Young coming in at number 1 from a standpoint of just 1 Super Bowl record, 6 touchdowns. That's obvious. But number 2, just the pressure that he had coming into this football game to perform. You had Mike Shanahan, who was the offensive coordinator at the time for the San Francisco 49ers. He moved on after this football game, became head coach of the Denver Broncos. As we all know, towards that late 90s stretch, they was able to win 2 consecutive Super Bowls with John Elway and Terrell Davis and company. Can't forget about Unc Shannon Sharp on that ball club as well. So I got Steve Young, man, coming in at number 1. As I mentioned, we've had a lot of great performances across the Super Bowl, so it's kind of hard, putting this list together. But I just think, at the end of the day, it's really just about just the moments in the Super Bowl that just makes it just big and just what it is, man. And that, guys and organizations that come in behind the 8 ball having pressure on them. We got unsung heroes that step up and do their thing as well. So just wanted to give y'all a little taste, man, of my big 5 Super Bowl performances that I remember recalling across the Super Bowls. We get into Super Bowl number 59. First of all, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot.